So this is a demo for your nameplate project. This project is all about kerning and alignment. I refer to this project as Kerning Bootcamp because once you're done with this project, you are going to learn, you're going to know all about kerning. Let's first take a quick look at your project to demo how to actually do this in Illustrator. So I start with a little bit of background and some definitions. Definitions are spacing. When we talk about spacing, we're talking about any types of space, spaces between letters, between words, and between lines of text. Kerning is the spacing, the horizontal spacing between individual letters. Tracking is an overall spacing of words and lines. So, kerning is the space between any two letters. Tracking is an overall adjustment to the kerning for an entire line of text. Leading, you already know, is the vertical spacing between lines of text, and you also know about optical alignment. Well, you know about optical adjustments. You're going to be introduced to the idea of optical alignment, where you're going to align elements so that they look correct. This is often very different from mathematical alignment, where things are perfectly lined up. When you're dealing with letters, you often have to tweak them so they look right. Alright, so this project, you're basically just going to create a nameplate. It's going to be your name, your first name and your last name, followed by typography 1. Your first name and your last name are going to be in title case, where the first letter of each name will be uppercase, then the rest will be lowercase, and then typography 1 will be in all caps. You're going to use Myriad Bold, and this typeface will be available to anyone who has Adobe Illustrator. And I've given you very specific measurements with which to do this. Now, the important thing is that typography 1 is going to align to the width that your name takes up. So someone with a short name like Paul Lachère, typography 1 would be much smaller point size to align to that width than someone like Massimo Vignelli, who has a much longer name. On his nameplate, typography 1 would be much larger point size so that it would align. So a lot of things are relative to the length of your name here. So page 1 has all of your directions. The directions continue onto page 2. I should note that there are some mounting directions. Step 11 through 13 are mounting directions. This applies to my live classes that meet in person. This obviously does not apply to my online classes. Online classes don't need to worry about mounting this project. And in our schematic on page 1, this black area, that actually represents the mounting board. So if you're in my online class, you don't have to worry about the mounting part of this project. I've also given you a few examples of what not to do. So at the top here, it says do not mathematically align the two lines. You can see that while the capital N and the capital T mathematically perfectly line up on their left edges, it looks misaligned because T is a very uneven letter. So you want to optically align these things. This often means knocking the T slightly to the left. Their second example down is do not add tracking to the second line. Both lines should have the same apparent spacing. So this person just added lots of space to make typography 1 fit. You don't want to do that. And then these two examples on the bottom are something that you should never ever do. This person vertically either expanded or contracted the type disproportionately in one direction to make it fit. So they made this type narrower than it was designed to be, or they made it wider than it was designed to be. This screws up the proportions of the type, this screws up the appearance of the type. It makes type designers cry. You should never ever do that. So those are all things not to do. And then page 3, I actually dropped in a few of the tips from a few different resources. So from Cyrus Highsmith's book, the Maggie Lewis Turning It Upside Down Trick, and then another example from another basic type book. So I'm going to demo to you how to actually do all this. So I'm going to bring this over to the side, and I'm going to fire up Illustrator. Okay, so in Illustrator, you want to create a new file. And I gave you guys initial dimensions of 6 inches wide by 2 inches tall. This is just a good starting point. You will have to change the overall dimension depending on your name. So keep that in mind as you move forward. If you need to make your artboard bigger or smaller, you can. You want to set this to be CMYK color and hit OK. And you remember to be 100% size, and Command 0 enlarges it to fit in the window. Those two Command 0 is fit to window, Command 1 is actual size. So the first thing you'll need to do is get your rulers. So you do View, Rulers, View, Show Rulers, Command R. You can see I have rulers on the top and left of my workspace. You need to place a vertical guideline 1/4 inch from the left edge and 1 3/4 down from the top edge, 3/4 of an inch. Line these up with the ruler, but is to unlock my guides, and use these measurement tools to make sure that I am actually as precise as I think I am. And you can see right here, my y-axis is horizontal, and my y-axis not quite top. So I'm just go in there and make it exactly what it should be. This guide, this should be pointed over from the left, and I can just go in here and make it exactly 0.25. I really love that those precision measurement tools, just because you can be extremely precise, you can be perfectly precise, but you can be do it in the easiest possible, take advantage of the computer. Now, so that's step 1 and 2. We have guidelines. Step 3, you want to create the type. So you go to your type tool, and you click the type on the intersection of those 2 lines, and you will get this flashing cursor. You want to go to your character menu, Myriad, or Myriad Pro, which should be installed with your copy of Illustrator, and make it 50 points. If you don't have this information up at the top of your screen, go to Window, type Character to get this palette. Okay? And with this, you want to type your name. So make sure you spell it right. In 50-point type. So you have an absolute point size measurement for your name. Line 2 is going to be dependent on the overall width. Now the first thing you want to do is move it to the left if it needs to align with this guideline. And then you want to start kerning. So the way you do that is you go in with your cursor tool. You don't want letters selected, you don't want the whole word or the whole line selected. You want the cursor tool flashing between letters. And once you have the cursor tool flashing, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move between pairs of letters. Now, when your cursor is like this, flashing between two letters, and you hold down the Option key, and the arrow keys on your keyboard will let you adjust the kerning. So this is Option and my left arrow brings it tighter, Option and the right arrow makes it looser. Option left arrow, Option right arrow. And you can see if you that as I adjust, as kerning, it changes there in my character palette. Now, this works in increments of 20,000ths of an M. An M is, if you take the overall, it's basically the square of the cap height of a letter. If you take the cap height and make it as wide as it is tall, that's an M. So it's a variable dimension depending on the size of your type. Your M is going to be different overall size, but it's a square of the cap height, basically. So 1,000th of an M is pretty small. So you want to go through and adjust the kerning in your name so that it all looks good. Now sometimes you may find a situation where one click of the key is too much, is too close, and the next click of the key is too far apart. This is a good example. Between the N and the here, between those two, it seems too tight. And then in the other direction, 50 seems too loose. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to take advantage of this. I'm going to do negative 55. I'm going to split the difference. I might do the same thing here, that between the R and the O. This seems too tight. That seems too loose. I might make it -32. Right. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, so I sort of quickly ran through here and kerned it, and I think it's looking okay, but it's going to take you guys a little longer. It just will, because you're first learning how to do this. The other thing you need to do is print this out and see how it looks. So before you do that, you want to save it. Save early, save often. Save as type 1, project 4, last name and first initial. And then once you have your kerning to a pretty good place, you want to print it out, check the printout. I highly recommend printing it out at actual size with trim marks and page information on. And go through it with a red pen and see where you think things should be tighter, where they should be looser. It's not going to look the same on screen as it will printed, and your ultimate proof should be how it looks printed. Another thing you should be careful of, I've been working fit to page this whole time, which is 300%. Make sure that you go back and look at it at 100%, because remember, size affects the kerning. And I can see right now that I'm looking at it at 100%, my kerning between the P and the R looks way too tight. So I'm going to come in here and fix that a little bit. And maybe give these a fair more space. So make sure you look at it at 100%. Once you have proofed and corrected your name, then it's time to do the second line, typography 1. But really make sure that you get your name kerned to a T first. Get it as perfect as possible kerning-wise first, because you're going to base the overall kerning of the second line on the first line. So you don't want to be going back and adjusting kerning later. So print, proof your print, check it again, get up, walk away, have a drink of water, come back, look at it again, look at it upside down. Make sure your name is kerned as perfectly as you can before you move on to the second line. When you're ready to move on to the second line, then you want 1/4 of an inch of leading in between this baseline and the cap height of the line below. I should mention, the way I'm making my guidelines appear and disappear, it's Command : or View, Hide Guides, View, Show Guides. So I'm gonna bring down another guideline. This one should go to 1 inch. The baseline is at 3/4 of an inch down from the top. This should be 1 inch down from the top. I'm going to again unlock my guides and make sure this is right at 1 inch. Yes, it is. Lock the guides back up. And now I'm going to create a new line that is typography 1 in all caps. Typography and a space and the number 1. Now I should warn you guys, this is a really tough word to kern in all caps. We have all of these irregularly shaped letters, we have round letters, meeting straight letters, meeting angled letters. This is a tough word to kern, but it's going to take some effort to get it looking really good. But I have faith I can do it. Now, you want to first kern this so that it has even. All right? Don't worry about the alignment, don't worry about the size. The first thing you want to do here is kern this so it has even spacing. And you also want this kerning of the word typography 1 to look visually similar to your name. So in other words, you don't want super tight kerning on your name and then super loose kerning on typography 1. Now, the R and the A is a good example where we have 2 angled letters. The leg of the R and the capital A create this huge open triangular space. So often to make it look good, they have to actually just touch at the bottom. Maybe not quite touch, maybe they actually are touching, or even overlapping just slightly. Remember, you're thinking about the overall negative space between the letters. So this is going to take a lot of back and forth, a lot of printing, a lot of testing. Remember to look at it at 100% size. Remember to look at it printed. Remember to print with crop marks and page information turned on, so that compare all your printouts to make sure that it all works. And get this kerned to a T. Now, I didn't do all that. I just did this very quickly. We're going to pretend that I spent all the time that you will spend, because I'm going to move on to the next step. Now, the first thing let's worry about is the optical alignment of this line to this line. Now, capital P has a straight vertical side. So the T underneath it, they are mathematically aligned here. That the left edge of the P is in the same exact place as the left edge of the T. But they don't look aligned because the T is uneven and it has this huge chunk of white space there. So what you need to do is make an optical correction. You need to actually this over a little bit so that the T is hanging out into the margin. Now, if you align the stroke of the T to the P, that's going to look like way too much. This is going to look uneven too. It's usually someplace in between where they visually look aligned. All right? So remember, looking right is more important than being right, mathematically speaking. You don't want mathematical alignment, you want optical alignment. This is like the overshoot on the rounded letters. It's better to look right than to be correct. Now let's say your first name starts with an uneven letter. Well, in this case, if my first name were Alexander, I might actually leave them mathematically aligned because the diagonal letter and the uneven letter sort of work together. If my name were Lewis, however, just because letters doesn't mean that they work together, because the L has this strong stem on the left-hand side. So I would have to, again, move the T over into the margin. Okay? If my name started with an O, and that O was just touching my left-hand margin, I might want to move the T back a little bit. So it's an important thing is that it's an optical alignment. The left-hand sides of the two letters should look optically aligned. All right, I'm professor. I'm going to return this really quick. Remember, this is Option and the arrow keys. And you can also use this dialog box up here. All right. Now, in order to get, I want this aligned with my left margin, and I want the T optically aligned to that. So I'm actually move it slightly to the left so it looks optically aligned. Now my next step is I will print this, I will check make sure that all of my kerning in both lines looks good and that they look consistent across both lines. Then it will be time to worry about the size of line 2. All right, so I'm going to drag a guideline over to the right, and I am going to select my second line with the black arrow tool. Now, you can grab a corner when you've selected with the arrow tool, and you can scale up and down. Now, I'm committing a type crime right now. Without inadvertently scaled disproportionately, I screwed up the proportions of that type. It's very easy to do by accident. You don't want to do it. In fact, I wish the software didn't accident. By just grabbing a corner and did the same thing again. All right, I screwed up my proportions. Undo. The way you want to do this is grab a corner and hold down Shift. If you hold down Shift, it will scale proportionally. This applies to Illustrator, this applies to InDesign, this applies to Photoshop, this applies to all of the Adobe software. You hold down Shift proportionally, which you always, always, always want to do. So now I have optically aligned left and right. I might go in here and tweak this kerning, just bring it a hair closer, just so that it is optically aligned here. Remember, if you have a round letter or an uneven letter or an angled letter as the letter of your last name, you also want to make sure that they're optically aligned. And there you go. So my name is at 50 points. You have an absolute value in your specification. Line 2, mine is at 46.78 points, is what I had to do to get this proportionally aligned here. Now the next thing I want to do, go back to where we have this schematic in the brief. Have a 1/4 inch of height up here. 1/2 inch tall is about what your name will be. 1/4 inch of leading in between. Second line will be a variable height, depending 3/8 inch below. And from type to the edge of the page, I have a 1/4 inch. So I need to measure 3/8 inch down, a 1/4 inch over. And I could use the rulers and figure out from here what's a 1/4 inch from here to here. I could figure out what's a 3/8 inch from here to here, but the math gets messy. Trick. Remember, I always like to be very precise, combined with doing it the easiest way I can figure out. And this is this is a trick a lot of designers use. You just go to the rectangle tool, and if you double click, you'll get this dialog box asking you what size of rectangle you want to make. So if I make a rectangle that is 1/4 inch wide, 0.25 inches, by 3/8 inch, which is 0.375, we'll get this little box. Here, in pull down guides, you will see this is 3/8 inch tall. It's 1/4 inch wide. So you can use this to measure. You bring down a guide, align it to the baseline of your second line, and you can bring more guides over here. Now, I'm going to show you the art tool. So right now our artboard is 6 inches wide by 2 inches tall, which is a little wider and a little taller than we need it to be. This tool is the artboard tool. You can see when I clicked it, suddenly my artboard got a dotted outline and I got these crop marks. And now I can grab the corner, drag this over to the guides I pulled, and now my artboard is exactly the size I want it to be. If I drag my measurement square over here into the gray, which is our workspace, it won't print, it won't be in the PDF. All right? So from here, you want to do another print, proof it again, check, double check, triple check, make sure all your kerning is as beautiful as it can be. Make sure all your measurements are absolutely correct. Once you're sure that it's good, you print it out, you trim it, you mount it. If you're in my online class, you just create a PDF from here. And creating a PDF in Illustrator is very easy. So we have been saving this file as an AI file. That's just Adobe Illustrator native format. To save it as a PDF, you just go to Save As, Adobe PDF. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Couldn't be easier. Just saves it as a PDF file. And you're done. Now remember, I did this all fairly quickly. You're going to take a lot longer with this. I've been kerning for a couple of decades, and you're just learning. And I also wasn't that careful with it, just for the sake of having a speedy demo. All right, so all of these directions are in your brief, point by point. Make sure that you follow all the directions. Okay, good luck.